Welcome. This is our last breakfast for this school year. We'll start again, Lord willing, in September with new breakfasts, right? We have one special guest with us today. I always like to do this, and I had a wonderful opportunity of sitting with this man last fall for probably an hour and a half. If you ever get to sit with a Supreme Court justice, and he's sitting on his couch, and he's got his arm on the chair and he's laid back and you're just talking. And it was very cool. So Justice Daniel Kelly is over here on my right. So you might want to say hi to him. Not a political statement, but just a recognition that next April is his election. He will be up for another 10-year term next April, right, after the one we just went through this spring. So you have 10 justices, I guess, all but 3 years you have an election, right, for those 10-year terms. So we're glad you're here with us this morning. Let's have a word of prayer, and then we will get going, all right? Let's pray. Father, we love you. We are so grateful for the day that you have provided for us. Thank you for these folks who have joined us. Thank you especially for Dan, for his willingness to come and to speak and to talk about something that is very much on our minds today, that of renewable energy. And Father, we pray as we sit through the conversation today, we might learn much, we might understand it better, we might be able to apply it. And Father, we just thank you for your goodness to us. We just pray that you might bless this time, might you be pleased, might you be glorified in Jesus' name. Amen. One item of business for you, because I have to do this. We have a golf classic that's coming up. It's on June the 7th. There are flyers outside. If you're on my email list, I'm sorry, but you have gotten like 5 emails already about this. But we would love to have you. We've moved it back. Last year it was in May. The day that the tournament was scheduled, it was 38 degrees, 100% forecasted rain with a wind chill temperature of 32 degrees. Now, I know I only look stupid, so we canceled that tournament that day, and we moved it to the first Friday in June. And somebody said, wow, this is a good day to do it. How about if we just move it to June? Sure, that'd be great. So it's June the 7th, the first Friday in June. We'd love to have you join us. The flyers are out on the table. Please grab one. Dan Litchfield is an engineer. I met him, I think, last fall down at the Milford Range. He was giving a conversation about the solar energy farm down on County E. If you don't know about that, I think he's going to tell you a little bit about it. He has another facility in Iowa County that is in the permitting process. There are some legal issues today. Don't listen, Judge. Yeah, there's some legal issues today. We don't know where those are going to go, but it's really close to being approved, so hopefully that will get done soon. But I think this is a very interesting topic for all of us to consider. So I'm going to invite Dan Litchfield to come up and share with you his comments, and then we'll get a chance to ask him some questions later on this morning, all right? Dan, if you would.
All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you, Steve. My name is Dan Litchfield. I'm Director of Renewable Development for Invenergy. We are a Chicago-based, worldwide operating clean energy company. And my job is awesome. I'm a wind farmer. I'm a solar farmer. I plan large energy projects, clean energy projects. Most of my experience, which is now about 12 years in the industry, has been with wind. But in the past 3 years, a lot of this has shifted towards solar. So I'm primarily going to talk about solar today, but if you have questions about wind, I can get to those later. The slide I have up here, Sinisippi Solar, is what we call a project we're developing south of Watertown, and another guy on my team is leading that. He's on his honeymoon right now, and I'm leading our project in Iowa County, Wisconsin. We call it Badger Hollow Solar, and that is on the verge of being permitted. We've done our part with the state And now we're just waiting on a decision from the Public Service Commission, which is somewhat up in the air right now with the litigation going around the extraordinary session, but hopefully we'll get that resolved soon and be able to proceed. But solar energy is a new opportunity for Wisconsin. We are here primarily because of this chart here. The cost of producing energy from the sun has dropped dramatically. And this is a function of the solar panels themselves being less expensive, but also everything else about it. The tracking system, we'll use a system that tracks the sun throughout the day. We can harvest more sun that way. That's become more reliable and less expensive. And in the past 9 years, the cost of solar energy has dropped dramatically, and this trend continues. It's not as steep as it was 10 years ago, but we are seeing continued marginal decreases in the cost of solar. So right now, we can produce energy from the sun in Wisconsin for less than the cost of burning coal. And so we're working with some big utilities in Wisconsin that are looking at some growth in their load. They need more power. And while we are seeking permits to build our project in Iowa County, they are, Madison Gas and Electric and Wisconsin Public Service are seeking approval to buy the project. And they have to demonstrate that they need the power, and this is the least cost option, period, of all forms of energy. And they've made their case. We're waiting on that decision, but we're confident we'll be able to proceed. So we're primarily here in Wisconsin because the cost of solar has come down and it is competitive. The utilities have grand plans of decarbonizing their fleet. Most of the energy in Wisconsin that powers the lights and the appliances here in this room and everything else we depend on comes from coal-fired energy, also a little bit of natural gas and nuclear. One interesting thing about Wisconsin, there are no fossil fuel resources in state. There's no gas that's produced, there's no oil that's produced, there's no coal that's mined. A gentleman from the Wisconsin Conservative Energy Forum came to our public hearing and stated that Wisconsin sends $14 billion a year out of the state to buy fuel. So if we can turn that model on its head and start producing energy from the sun in state, we can not only supplement the electricity supply, but as we look to a transition to electric vehicles, this is just a shift in the economy that can be terrific for the state of Wisconsin and communities like Watertown. So we can offer value because of the cost of solar declining. Wisconsin is now 38th in the nation for installed solar capacity, but it's got similar sun to some of the northeastern states that have a lot more aggressively started to install solar. Here's a great quote that epitomizes this. Utility scale solar produces energy at the time of year and day when our customers need it most, making it a reliable, renewable generation option in the marketplace. And that was a quote from Gail Klappa, CEO of WEC. WEC is the parent company of We Energies and Wisconsin Public Service. They're a big customer of ours. We've done 4 or 5 different projects with them already. And they're slated to be a customer for the Badger Hollow project. So one key point in this, not only is it cost competitive, but solar energy kind of obviously is producing energy during the day when the sun is out. And if you don't follow wholesale electricity markets like people in our industry do, that's when there's higher prices for electricity because there's more demand. So not only can we compete on cost, period, but our generation is higher value because it shows up when it's needed. So I'm going to step back and talk about Invenergy, the company I work for. The company's been in business for going on 18 years now. A lot of experience across the 4 key technologies that are making up the growth in the grid right now. So wind, 93 projects over 13,000 megawatts. Solar is newer to our business portfolio, but growing very rapidly. We have done 26 projects totaling 2,750 megawatts. I'll give some context on megawatts in a minute. So these are projects that are either built or in construction or slated for construction. Battery storage, I'll talk about this a little more. This is really cutting edge, but large grid-connected batteries that can supply services to the grid, balancing variation in power, demand, and generation, and also storing power and shifting it to when it's needed. and then natural gas-fired power. I personally just work on the renewable side, but I have colleagues that do natural gas-fired development, combined cycle power plants, and peaking plants. So here's a partial listing of some of the customers and other partnerships we've developed over our 18-year track record. I've put boxes around some of the Wisconsin utilities: WEC Energy Group, Alliant, Madison Gas and Electric, Whippy Energy, which is a coalition of public utilities. These are all existing partnerships and customers of ours. In Wisconsin, we have a regulated utility market, so primarily, if we're going to do business, it's going to be with a utility in the state. But in other states, we do a growing book of business with commercial and industrial customers like Google, 3M, Dow Corning, Equinix, Kimberly-Clark, also Facebook. Large energy users that have two motivations to work with us. One, they want to demonstrate to their customers that they're using clean energy. Two, they want to save costs on energy. And so renewable energy, not only is it cost competitive now, but you think about the fundamentals of our business model. We build wind turbines or solar panels, and then we never pay for fuel. Combined cycle power plants, natural gas-fired power plants, a big portion of their operating cost is the cost of fuel. And right now, natural gas is pretty cheap. It has been for past 6-7 years. But if it goes up, the cost of power goes up. We don't have that fuel price risk with renewable energy. And so we can offer not just affordable energy, but long-term contracts, so we can offer stability. So, Sinisippi Solar. This is the project we're planning in your area. This map here, the city of Watertown. And we're leasing land south and east of Watertown. I don't have a pointer, but some of you may be familiar. There's a gas-fired power plant southeast of town called the Concord Generating Station, owned by We Energies. There's a big substation there. We look at those as access to market. That's like an outlet into the electricity marketplace. And so we want to try to plug in there. We're currently talking with landowners. We expect long-term the project could utilize about a little over 2,000 acres of farmland. We've got a little bit more than that leased right now. We're working on finalizing that and then can get into permitting. So talk about transmission. Schedule-wise, we're still doing engineering and environmental surveys and other planning work this year. And then we'd hope to submit an application to the Public Service Commission of Wisconsin in 2020. That is a very thorough state-led process. We're, like I mentioned, in the 9th inning of that for our Iowa County project now. It'll take at least 6 months. We've got probably 3,000 pages worth of application materials we've presented. There's written public comment periods. There's local public hearings. There's a lot of public input opportunities, which I'd welcome you to get involved in for this project and our others in the future. And then long-term, what we look at for this project is a 25 to 50-year operational life. So we've sought and received voluntary easements from the owners of the farmland, and we expect a 25 to 30-year operating life of a project, and then that gives us the opportunity to renew the project 25 or 30 years from now with newer technology, operate it for another 25 years, and then we have to remove everything and restore the land. Potentially we could renegotiate and can keep on going, but we just start with a max of a 50-year operating period with our landowners. So clean energy. I think I mentioned 300 megawatts. That's what we think is the scale of the project we're planning here, Sinisippi Solar. So 300 megawatts of solar is enough for about 75,000 average houses worth of electricity. So this is a lot of power. We operate on a utility scale or wholesale. Does anyone have solar panels on their residence or business? All right, it's growing. We got one. So 10 solar panels might be enough for like an average house. A 300 megawatt project could involve 1 million solar panels. The benefits of producing energy from the sun, there are no air emissions. So when we burn coal or natural gas, not only do we get carbon dioxide emissions, but we get other emissions such as nitrogen oxide, sulfur dioxide. These are things that have real health impacts and as well as acid rain. Now that is regulated and limited compared to what it was 20, 30 years ago, but it's not zero like it is with solar. We also don't use water. That's not a huge problem in the Midwest, but there have been fossil fuel powered power plants in the Southwest that have had to stop operations in recent years because of drought and not having access to water for cooling. We see that becoming more and more of an issue. The operations are extremely quiet and have no odors. It is as low impact of a energy generation technology as it gets. An extremely low profile. The height of the solar panels above ground, depending on what racking system we use, are at most 15 feet tall. And then we'll plant native vegetation, native prairie underneath the solar panels. And there's a whole bunch of benefits that come from that. And I'll get to that. But this is a photograph of a solar project in Florida that's under construction right now. So you can see rows and rows of panels. This is a 75 megawatt site. I'm not sure this picture shows all of that, but we're looking at, this times 4. I also see it as a fit with farming. The farmers we're renting land from can't grow corn or soybeans within the solar array. But we talk, and one of my favorite parts of the job is talking with the landowners. And we meet all kinds. We've got landowners in Iowa County and here who are multi-generation farm families, and they're going to continue farming. They're struggling with really low commodity prices in the ag market right now. Corn, soybeans, very low, dairies as well, dairy and milk prices. So they see the opportunity to lease some of their land to our project as an opportunity to hedge the overall business and get some stable cash flow from our solar rent, and then use that cash flow to invest and stabilize their business. We also see people who rent land to other farmers, and they see this as a better opportunity. And if they're not actively farming it themselves, it could be an opportunity for them to keep the farm in the family. We had some great testimony from one of our landowners in Iowa County about how he's retired, he doesn't farm anymore, he rents it, he's got 4 grown kids, they don't farm, they want to keep the farm in the family, and there's limited income they have for renting their land to another farmer. This they see as an opportunity to keep the land in their family for the long term. So, ground cover. Here's a cross-section of some different native plants on the left. We've got turf grass, and then corn, and then soybeans. The key point, these don't have very deep roots. Towards the right are different native plant species that we're looking at planting in Iowa County, and we would do a similar program here. So the native plants take longer to establish, but when they do, they're in it for the long term. They put in these deep root structures, and long term, this builds soil. One of our Iowa County farmers said it best: every farmer knows their best soil is in their fence line, meaning it's the land that hasn't been disturbed for decades. And while this is a long-term use of the land at 25 to 50 years, it's not forever. And so they're already looking forward to the project getting built and then seeing how good that soil is 25 to 50 years from now. The soil is good now for farming because of this type of ground cover over hundreds, if not thousands of years. It reduces stormwater runoff. You can just see how deep those roots are. This mathematically absorbs more water in a rain event than current row crop agriculture. So has a potential to reduce flooding, has a potential to recharge springs that have not been running as much. Improves downstream water quality. So farms that have either had manure application and or just normal ag chemicals, some of that runs off into the water stream. This will stop because of the prairie. So a site as big as this, 2,000 acres or so, it is big, but the bigger it is, the more these benefits accrue. And also pollinator habitat. So bees are really under threat, and bees are necessary for our food supply. They pollinate apples, soybeans, a variety of different crops, fruits and vegetables. And so we're going to be planting some of this field to specific flowering plant species that provide habitat to various pollinating insects, including butterflies. And then finally, I think there's an opportunity to do grazing. There are solar projects in Wisconsin, not as big as ours, that have sheep that graze. Solar is such a simple technology. One of the biggest operational activities we have is mowing. So if we can have sheep that do that, that potentially saves costs, saves effort. Can't use goats. They'll climb on the panels. They'll chew on stuff. Can't use cattle. They're too big. They'll rub against things. But sheep are a real opportunity. I've got colleagues in New York that are doing this now and planning projects, similar to the scale. I don't know that we can graze 2,000 acres with sheep in year one, but it is an opportunity we're looking into. So it's a little bit on the technology. Here's a photograph, single-axis tracking system. So you may have seen, if you've seen solar projects in Wisconsin now, they're probably a little different than what we're proposing. There are some single-axis tracking systems. There are also fixed tilt systems. So these be rows of panels that run east-west and face south. And they're fixed. They don't tilt. They just face south. There's also some isolated installations of double-axis trackers. So they'll tilt throughout the day to track the sun from the morning to the afternoon, and they'll also adjust their angle throughout the seasons to track the sun. So at the utility scale, we've settled on the single-axis tracker as the most economical way of doing this. So we'll have rows of panels that run north-south, and they'll track the sun throughout the day, facing east in the morning at a 60-degree tilt, flat at noon, and then west in the afternoon. And so being able to do that allows for a lot more production of energy for the same panels. And the technology to do this is very simple and reliable. So that's why we're deploying it at large scale. Solar resource, definitely a question I've gotten is, why don't you just put these in the desert? It's obviously a lot sunny there. That's true, but there is a decent amount of sun in Wisconsin, as you know. So this is a map with the different colors indicating the estimated solar resource. Southwestern Wisconsin being a little bit sunnier, the star showing generally where we are here. So it is a modest solar resource, but it is economical to harvest. And we can get some pretty reliable data from satellites, but we also put up basically a camera that just looks up and measures the sun prior to construction, so we can verify how sunny it is. But it's also, like I said earlier, Massachusetts, New Jersey, New York, all of New England, Germany has a lot more solar installed and a lot less sun than we have here. The desert is sunnier, but Arizona's, 1,500 miles away from here? It's kind of challenging to harvest. It's impossible, really, to harvest sun there and bring power lines here to deliver it. Okay, so here's a map of the Badger Hollow Solar Farm. This is the project I was speaking of earlier in Iowa County, Wisconsin. This is our first project in Wisconsin. If we are able to proceed as planned and this is permitted and we start construction, this would be the largest solar project in the Midwest. The town in the northeast corner is Cobb, and the northwest corner of this map is Montfort. If you've been out this way, US Route 18 is kind of the northern boundary of our project. There's 20 wind turbines there that have been there since 2001, the Montfort Wind Farm. Interestingly enough, the wind turbines were manufactured by and the site was developed by Enron, the poster child for energy bankruptcies. A lot of people ask me, valid concern, what happens if your project goes bankrupt and you leave these solar panels in the field? We've got plans to remove that, and we'll have funding to do that. But look at this example. Literally, Enron manufactured and developed the project, hasn't missed a beat. It's been operating for 18 years. It's owned by We Energies. But the green area on this map is land that we have leased. It's kind of hard to see at this scale, but there's some gray shading of where the actual panels are planned. So it doesn't have to be like one blob. It spreads out. It's all voluntary easements. Some people want to participate, some people don't. This is what that particular project looks like, and we're still figuring out the shape and arrangement of our local project here. All right, so a word on storage. This photograph is a rendering of a project that's now under construction in New York. So a large battery doesn't look like a giant Energizer 9-volt in the field. These would be a steel building with like computer racks full of batteries and a cooling system, all hooked up to the grid. So this is really cutting edge technology. Invenergy is a leading implementer of this technology. What we can do with this technology is think of it as a suspension system like you have on a car that smooths out the bumps. So we can use a battery system tied to solar to smooth out the output of the solar project. Not that it's particularly bumpy, if you will, but there will be variations, particularly on a partly cloudy day. The output will rise and fall. We can use the battery to smooth that out. We can also shift it or schedule it. So while there is a lot of demand for electricity in the day and in the middle of the day, in the middle of the day is when we peak our output. Typically, peak demand is late afternoon to early evening. So we can size the battery appropriately to just shift our output to when the demand is highest and put the power on the grid when it's needed. So that's what I've got on storage. So availability. So the project we have here at Sinisippi Solar, like I mentioned, it's a long timeline ahead. We're still doing our planning work, talking with landowners, talking with neighbors. And 2020 we'll begin permitting, but we recognize what we're doing is pretty new and different. We want to make sure we're available. So here's a picture of Tammy. Tammy Vitrano is someone we've hired as our local representative. We've opened an office, 136 Union Street in Johnson Creek. Hired Tammy. Here's her contact information. We have public office hours, Tuesday 8 to 1, Wednesdays 12 to 5. She will be there. Anyone can just show up. What is this all about? See some maps, get some of the fact sheets and brochures we have, answer questions. We've also made a website and a Facebook page. The Facebook is a fun technology to use for this because we can put information out. We can also get questions in, answer those publicly. And we're not here to hide anything. I think our project on its facts is a terrific thing for the community, for the area specifically, for the state of Wisconsin. And we just want to get the information out. So trying to make ourselves available. If you have, and definitely I'm going to stick around, we'll do a Q&A right here in a moment. If you have lingering questions in the future, you're welcome to go visit with Tammy. Bobby Howard is a development manager on my team. He's our lead for this project. He's actually on his honeymoon right now, so he's not here, but he's the lead for this project. There's his phone number and email, and here's mine. And that's pretty much what I've got as far as prepared material, and I'm happy to answer any question you have. I think Steve's going to pass out some mics. Trying to track down the mics. If you got questions, maybe we'll just get started if you want to raise your hand or just shout it out.
How does solar play out for resiliency at the local community level?
So the question is, how does solar play out for resiliency at the local community level? So our project is going to be grid tied. And so if the wholesale grid goes down, our project has to shut down because we're tied into that. Different types of solar technology can be used for resiliency, and particularly if you have battery storage as emergency battery backup. It remains to be seen exactly how we would size a battery for this. Potentially there's some resiliency aspects to this, but by and large, this is part of the utility grid.
Someone else have a question?
I can email them to you, yeah.
So you said you're from Illinois?
Yeah, I'm based in Chicago.
Oh, okay. I was just going to say go Packers and Brewers. So first off, that's...
Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that. Second thing, what's the negative? You know, we see all these signs in that just south of town that, you know, don't do the solar farms. What are people saying the negative?
So there's a lot of different things that are concerns that we hear about and we have to address. It's hard to list them all. I think, view is a concern people have. They're used to looking at rows of corn. and they don't want to look at rows of solar panels. Aesthetics are important. At the Badger Hollow project, we've proposed a screening program. That's one of the good things about solar being low profile. If we have a neighbor to the project that really doesn't want to see the project, we can screen it. We can plant trees. It's only at most 15 feet tall. We can block that view if they don't want it. I've heard concerns about noise from solar panels, which frankly is just not accurate. There are tracking motors, like I showed. They move, not even one whole revolution throughout a day, so there's limited noise from that. The panels generate DC or direct current electricity, and we have to invert that to alternating current. So there's a big box called an inverter that does that. That has a hum to it. These are going to be several hundred feet into the fields, at a property line, at a house. They're going to be inaudible. These are the types of questions that come up in the state process, and we have to address them. So we've actually done a noise model. We've actually done noise measurement. We went to the field, measured the noise that's at the site now, which is mainly traffic and wind, and then had to model what the solar project would do, and it's going to be inaudible. So it's hard to address all of them, but yeah, there's questions, and that's what we're here to do, fill in facts.
So what states are you currently in? Other states besides Wisconsin are you looking to get into?
Yeah, good question. So if you go to invenergyllc.com, you can see that's our company website, and there's a map of all of our projects. So we have smaller projects now operating, I'll just say decent-sized projects, 20 megawatts in Illinois, 25 in New York, 50 in Nevada. And right now we're constructing a 160 megawatt project in Georgia, the 75 in Florida. Solar is really gaining steam quickly. So as I grew up in Ohio, I'm Midwest through and through, and so I kind of, in the region I work now, which is Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, and the Dakotas, solar is going to be the technology of choice in Wisconsin because it's just not as windy here. But some of the central plains, northwestern Iowa, southwest Minnesota, the Dakotas are still pretty windy. There's still going to be some opportunities to do wind there. But we're very active in almost all states. I work in the central region, so we have very near-term construction-ready projects in Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin, Iowa, and Minnesota is not far behind. Hope that answers your question. The question is, who manufactures the solar panels? So there's a variety of different manufacturers. We've announced a long-term contract with a company called Longi, Longi. The panels are manufactured in Malaysia. They have some very exciting leading-edge technology called bifacial panels. So the physics of the solar panels, I won't get into all the details, but sun shines on them, they generate electricity. A panel or a module is made up of typically 72 to 78 cells, and the physics of the solar cells, they generate electricity whether they get sun from the front or the back, and modules that can harvest sun from the back are called bifacial, and this is really leading edge stuff. It's simple, but it is an innovation. So we're using bifacial panels for our Iowa County project, and the benefit of those in a northern latitude, there's not much sun that hits the back of the panels, but there is some, and there's particularly a lot of sun or reflection when you've got snow on the ground. So you can have a significant boost in your production when you've got sunlight. Like a clear but cold winter day is ideal for solar generation because they're more efficient in cold weather. And if we have a blanket of snow, light bounces off the snow, hits the back of the panel, and that counts too. So there is domestic manufacturing of solar panels, solar modules. The U.S. market for solar modules is not a big portion of the overall market. So I'm optimistic there's going to be more in the U.S. as we implement more projects like this. But there's a variety of different manufacturers. First Solar is one that's based in Ohio. SunPower is another domestic company, but most of their production is overseas now. So it's kind of all over the place. We definitely consider domestic production as well. We just happen to have a long-term contract with this one Malaysian company.
Who actually will own the wind farm or the solar farm upon completion? Is it you? Is it the utility?
Yes, the Iowa County project is planned to have utility ownership. So Invenergy's role is the development or planning, which is my function. And we actually have a unique situation there where the structure contemplated is after the development activities are complete, so hopefully June, July timeframe, we'll sell the project to Madison Gas and Electric and Wisconsin Public Service. Then Invenergy is hired to be the general contractor and build the project. And then we're also going to be providing operations services for the long term. So nationwide, we have different models, typically either selling projects to utilities and they own it, or we continue to own it and we sell power under long-term contracts. Now in Wisconsin, as a regulated market, companies like MG&E and Wisconsin Public Service are incentivized to own these assets. So they want to own them, and we're happy to develop and sell it to them and operate it for them, but that's the structure that works here.
Is there a benefit to the county and township that these are in? And if so, what might that be?
Thank you very much for that question. I just realized now I omitted that slide. So, so jobs. During our construction phase, a project of this size will probably have 500 construction jobs for a year and a half to 2 years. So there'll be a lot of surge in economic activity related to that. To tax revenue, significant. So in Wisconsin, there's kind of a convoluted formula, but the bottom line is the project local tax benefit would be $4,000 per megawatt per year. So for a 300 megawatt project, we're looking at $1.2 million per year in tax revenue. So that's pretty significant. That's approximately 66% to the county, 33% to the town where the panels are hosted. And then finally, long-term cash flow. So, and again, I deleted this slide, but it's tens of millions of dollars over the life of project in landowner rental payments. So that is money that gets recycled in the community in terms of buying a new car, going out to dinner, stuff like that. So significant. It's an economic base activity. So this is new generation. It's extracting the sun, selling it, and providing locally jobs, tax revenue, and lease revenue.
What's the staffing plan when it's operational?
Sorry, we got two. Cleaning up? And cleaning up the land, yes. Sorry, Steve.
What's the staffing plan when it's operational?
I forgot, I missed the first part. The what plan?
Staffing plan. How many people
Staffing.
are on the site? How many people operate the facility?
Yeah, so it's not a huge number. For a project of this size, we'd expect 5 long-term jobs. So not a huge number, but these are highly skilled, highly paid jobs that maintain and operate the project for the long term.
Who's responsible for funding the decommissioning of these facilities?
So decommissioning is what we call the removal of the project. We have proposed that in our leases with our landowners, we have an obligation to remove everything and restore the land at the end of the life of the project. And we have proposed that if there is no permit condition, we'll put a bond or a letter of credit, some independent financial assurance in place at year 15 of operations. That's what we've proposed in our state permit as well. And we're just waiting on a condition of whether they accept that or they want a bond initially. Realistically, it's a very low-risk business model because it's upfront expense, low operating expenses. We do not anticipate a bankruptcy or an abandonment of facilities in the near term. Look at the Montfort Wind Farm 18 years in with the Enron birth of that. And with utility ownership, you're looking at, A-rated, credit-worthy utilities that are going to own it. So I think it's pretty stable. So the answer is the project will, and at some point there'll be independent financial assurance to make sure it happens.
Anyone else?
So you had mentioned that there is financial benefit to the farmer, virtually to lease the land out. Is there any sort of fee to them? As I'm thinking like liability-wise for insurance, having these panels on their properties. Who takes care of that?
Yeah, we do. That's part of our lease, and our lease agreement provides for payments to the landowners, also, allows us to install the panels, and then a lot of other terms that protect landowners, such as we've got to indemnify them against issues related to the project, provide insurance that names them as being covered. We also backstop their property taxes in case there's a change in law. Their property taxes go up because of the solar project. We pay that. There's a lot of different landowner protections in there that we've developed in our 18 years of business that make this palatable.
What's the minimum amount of acreage, that you guys are looking for, on these farms? I don't know if you answered that earlier or not, but, is it like 2,000 acres or is it 500 acres or it doesn't matter?
So for the project as a whole, we think the project will need a little over 2,000 acres to install. For permitting purposes, we actually have to provide extra. So we're seeking probably about 3,000 acres of leases. If your question is how many an individual needs to own in order for us to be interested, it varies. This site is honestly a little more challenging than some of the others, including Iowa County, because there's smaller parcels and there's more landowners. So I think we probably have some people here that own 300 or 400 acres. We have people here that own 20 acres that have leased it to us. So we'd like to build the project in 20 to 30 acre blocks. The more rectangular that is, the more efficient it is. So if someone's got a 2-acre yard, we're probably not interested in that. But 20 acres and up, typically we want to talk to people. We are talking to these people.
Anyone else?
So I've just been curious, where do you get the name for Mississippi? How did you come up with that?
So Bobby and our team picked that name. I understand it's a Native American name for the Rock River. And we thought that's unique. There's no one else who's doing a project called Mississippi Solar, and it's kind of a mouthful, but it's unique, so we picked it.
All right, you talked about the 5 people on site. Are they going to manage your sheep that you said you're going to have on site, or is that one of the local farmers?
That doesn't count a shepherd. That'd be additional.
Somebody's going to deal with them, right? Could you contract with a farmer to handle those, or would you?
Yeah. No, that's how it's done now. I've got a colleague in New York whose partner is a sheep farmer, and her business is renting sheep to solar projects to do ground cover. And so that is a business model, and I'm hopeful that, like at the Badger Hollow site, we have 3 landowners who've come to us, like, I would like to provide some sheep for a certain portion of the site to do it. So I think in the years ahead, you're going to be able to turn on your lights and have solar-powered electricity and sit down to a dinner of solar-powered lamb chops. So.
Wearing your wool sweater.
Wearing your wool sweater.
All right, anybody else? All right, Dan, thank you very much. We're glad you were here. Thank you all for coming. Please don't rush off, but thanks for joining us for our breakfast series. We'll see you in the fall.